Welcome, everyone. For an evening of exploring the future of AI and asking ourselves the hard question, is that future too much to handle? I have the privilege to being the host of this evening. My name is Maarten Geem. I'm a director of the Argumentation Factory. Some of you may have seen me here before because last year we had a similar event with Stuart Russell. Professor Stuart Russell, and just to see a show of hands, who was there during that time? Okay. Well, if you thought that was depressing, prepare for this evening. Because compared to the speaker of today, Dr. Roman Yampolskiy, Stuart Russell is an optimist. Just to quote from your recent book, or the press release, I should say, "We are facing an almost guaranteed event with potential to cause an existential catastrophe. The outcome could be prosperity or extinction, and the fate of the universe hangs in the balance." Well, those are a dire warning, I would say. In a few moments, we'll hear your talk, and thereafter we'll have some question and answer with the audience. Followed by a panel discussion with 3 parliamentarians, 2 researchers and 1 civil servant, which almost sounds like the start of a joke. Thereafter also Q&A with the audience, followed by drinks. And I've heard the first one is on the house, so it's yay. Yeah. Okay, but now over to the first act of the evening, Dr. Roman Yampolskiy. He's an associate professor in the Department of Computer Engineering and Computer Science at the Speed School of Engineering at the University of Louisville. Never heard of that, but I heard it's a great place. One of the founding fathers of AI safety research and the founder and current director of the cybersecurity lab at the university. Writer of many books, most recently one with the ominous title, AI, Unexplainable, Unpredictable, Uncontrollable. That sort of summarizes the gist, I guess, of what you're about to say. So without further ado, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Yes, excellent. Where are my slides at? Where am I looking at? Let's see. Aha, excellent. So thank you for this wonderful introduction. I really appreciate it. I have not been called a father of anything other than my kids ever before. So that's nice. If you have any questions after this short 30-minute talk, you can follow me for more information. I post a lot on Twitter, X. I post on Facebook. Just don't follow me home. It's very important. If you attended Stuart Russell's talk, you probably already know a lot about AI. Some of the things I'll tell you will not be as novel for you, but hopefully I still have something new to offer. So about a year ago, something happened. A new AI model was released in the world, and unlike previous AIs, for the first time ever, it made some people go that maybe it's showing sparks of generality. It wasn't just a chess-playing program or a car trying to drive itself. It was capable of doing many things in many domains. Some things it was not explicitly trained to do. So here you can see how well it did on many standardized exams, law exams, medical exams, college exams, and it did really well on most of those things. It wasn't perfect in some mythology and things like that, but on science and engineering, it was pretty impressive. And so I think we need to kind of try to understand what it means in terms of current capabilities and in terms of upcoming capabilities for those systems. Historically, every time we tried to make AI do something, we had to kind of start from scratch. If I create a program to play tic-tac-toe, it does nothing for my ability to have a program play chess. With systems which are more general, if we can find a scaling approach, scaling architecture, It means we can just add more compute, add more data, and get additional capabilities out of the system, the so-called scaling hypothesis. And it seems that maybe we are actually in possession of such a model. Some people disagree, but it seems that maybe we have successfully created something capable of becoming much more powerful with every level of scaling in terms of compute. We had GPT-1, which no one noticed, GPT-2, which was impressive to some scholars, then GPT-3 hit, and GPT-4 was, of course, the latest model, and now we hear that GPT-5 is being trained. So, interesting question is how soon before AGI? I don't have any insider information on that, but I'll share with you what some other people think. CEOs of major companies like DeepMind and Anthropic said that maybe we're 2 years away. If you look at prediction markets, and those are, of course, markets, they fluctuate. Last time I did a screen grab, it was about 2 years away. I think more recently it's been 3 years. Maybe today it's 1, I haven't checked. But they all seem to be in agreement that something big might be happening soon. Ray Kurzweil, a famous futurist, uses his ability to map computational capacities on different types of systems, like living brains, brains of animals and humans. And for the last decade or so, I've been showing this slide to different audiences. And before, it was all about the future. So I was saying by 2023, we'll have systems capable of simulating one human brain. Now it's 2024, and this is past. And this is the year we had a very powerful AI system released. And his next prediction is that by 2045, we'll have enough compute to simulate all the brains, all 8 billion of us, a system which will be super intelligent. And maybe by 2029, he expects a true AGI system as capable as any human. So what can we expect from those systems? What properties, capabilities can we predict a superintelligent system would have? One is, of course, it's going to be smart. That's not so innovative. What does that mean? If you look at narrow systems, they outperform the best humans in that domain. So if it's a chess-playing program, it's better than human world champion. If it's any other limited domain, games like Jeopardy, same idea. We expect superintelligent systems to be smarter than any human in all domains, including science and engineering. So they would be able to take over development of future generations of AI systems, hardware for their systems, and all the other scientific research. We expect those systems to be very complex. That's not surprising either. This here is a picture of an instrument panel for an airplane, kind of like a GUI interface to the autopilot and all the other parts of the airplane. It's confusing enough to where even experienced pilots have a hard time tracking some of it, but it's even worse for the source code behind the autopilot. With years and years of experience, some pilots are still not sure what's going on, how to communicate with those systems, and we started to see accidents happen as a result. Those systems are also very fast, not in the same sense as computers are fast. We know computers are quick, but I'm talking about ultra-fast extreme events where the system can change your whole environment so quickly, you don't have time to react, and then it might return it to the original state, or maybe not. So here you have a stock market crash. In a matter of milliseconds, billions of dollars of value is wiped out and maybe brought back. Actually, 2 days ago, I was flying to give another talk, and US stock market had not a flash crash, but a crash where a lot of big companies lost 99% of their value, and I missed it. So that's a very sad part of my talk. Wilmington. So, of course, given all that, we would never be silly enough to surrender control to AI, right? But we actually did many years ago, before it became even smart. Software controls most of the stock market, power plants, electrical grid, nuclear response. We have already surrendered much of the control before we even got to AGI. My background is in cybersecurity, so I'm very interested in how AI and malevolent software will interact. We're starting to see systems capable of producing very believable deepfakes, not just pictures, but audio, video with audio, which makes it possible to automate social engineering attacks on completely unprecedented scale. If before, to send a single spear phishing email, I had to study your social media, tailor it just right. Now I can send millions of such tailored requests, including this multimedia content, and studies show that everyone clicks on those links. Everyone, even people with training in cybersecurity, end up clicking on something from their family member, boss, especially if it's a believable video representation. Historically, a lot of funding for AI work came from military organizations. Today, industry is probably the #1 founder of AI research in general, but there is still military research on AI, and they, of course, have interest in automating killing of humans. So while there is useful work on rescue robotics and things of that nature, a lot of work goes into autonomous drones and killer soldiers. Yeah. So I don't want you to get scared. There is a lot of positive in this technology. AI is awesome. It can help us with research. It can help us get free labor, free stuff, physical, cognitive, trillions of dollars. We can cure diseases. We can live forever. It can also do unknown unknowns, things I cannot even imagine it is capable of doing. Unfortunately, it's the last happy slide I have, because for every single one of those very positive things, there is a negative counterpart. Free labor means technological unemployment. And if it can do every job, all jobs go. And just like with the previous slide, there are still unknown unknowns, things which we cannot predict it can do. We cannot prepare for them because we're not smart enough to anticipate those possibilities. So the good news is there is a lot of people who are now concerned about this problem and taking it seriously. A lot of famous people, rich people, leaders of companies, thousands of scholars, in fact, many computer scientists, Turing Award winners, who stated that they equate risk from AI with that of nuclear weapons, meaning existential risk. What are they all concerned about? There is many problems, but they basically think that what we are creating is very different from how humans think and what humans want. If you think about all possible minds, the space of possible designs for a brain-like architecture, artificial neural network, alien minds, animal minds, alien robot minds, the space is infinite. All of us, as diverse as we are, different cultures, different languages, we have very similar architecture in terms of our DNA, in terms of our brain design, in terms of room temperature preferences, foods we like. So all of us are that pale blue dot right there. We are pulling a somewhat random mind from out of space of possible minds. We're not designing it specifically, we are kind of making it grow and teach itself. And so there is a good chance it will have very different preferences from the rest of us. Luckily, as I said, there is some response starting to take place. There are national institutes now being formed in the US and other countries. There are many research labs, and all the big AI labs have safety teams, or had safety teams. There is unprecedented amounts of interest in a topic. There is now funding available. You can get invited to give a talk on this topic. All of this was not the case 10 years ago. It was pure science fiction. So in some ways, we're doing really well. The problem is that all that is still a tiny percentage of resources allocated for development of those systems. And if you remember the scaling hypothesis, to develop a more capable system, you just need to add more funds, more money for compute. Whereas we have no idea how to do safety. And if you give someone 10 times the money, they don't output 10 times the safety. So the gap between capabilities research and safety research keeps increasing. We don't even fully understand what the problem is. There is not even a general agreement on what it is we're trying to solve. If you look at history of AI from 60s and 70s, a lot of it was ethics work under different terms, computer ethics, robot ethics, but we tried to teach machines to kind of do what humans do. Once we got closer to seeing results and thinking we might get human-level performance, not just narrow tool AI, the names also changed. We started calling it friendly AI, control problem. I call it AI safety and security engineering, but there is many others. Value alignment, human compatible is what Stuart Russell uses. Without having to agree on what the name is, let's just say it's the problem of control, whatever. And let's try to understand how well we can do with it. So one thing we do in computer science before investing resources into solving a problem, we try to understand if a problem is solvable. If it's not, then you have different tools for approximate solutions. But we don't know if a problem of indefinitely controlling superintelligent machines is actually solvable. It could be. Maybe it's partially solvable, undecidable. Maybe it's unsolvable. What do experts think about it? So here I have a sampling of 3 different experts: an outsider AI safety researcher, a former head of superintelligence alignment team for a large AI lab, and the father of machine learning Turing Award winner. And they somewhat disagree. The answers range from it's trivially solvable to not in this timeline to I have no idea, and that's the answer from the Turing Award-winning computer scientist. So we don't really know how hard the problem is. What I'm trying to do in my work is think about what tools would I need to solve that problem. I need to be able to understand how the system works, be able to get an explanation of that and comprehend that explanation, be able to predict what the system is going to do, communicate with the system in a non-ambiguous way, verify that the code behind the system is exactly what the software engineers intended, and probably some other tools. So how well are we doing in terms of access to those tools? In terms of explainability and comprehension, the only true explanation for how a system makes its decision is the model itself. The model is too large. It's not surveyable. You cannot just read the weights from it. So the alternative is to get a simplified explanation. Top 10 reasons you got denied credit. I mean, it's useful information, but it doesn't give you a full picture. So you either get something you cannot comprehend, or you get lossy compression. With predictability, there is also problems. You can predict terminal goal of the system. If you're playing chess, the system may be interested in winning the game. It probably will win the game. But you don't know specifically how it's going to get there, what moves the system is going to make. If you could predict that, you would be playing at that level of chess. So we're also limited in terms of our prediction. There are limits to verifying mathematical proofs and software. For mission-critical software, we know how to verify with pretty high mathematical guarantee static code, things which are deterministic, which we know what they're supposed to be doing, and we know what the edge cases are. That's possible. We don't know how to verify software which continues to learn, interact with users, self-modify, work across multiple domains. And even if we figured out that difficult problem, at the end we still have a single verifier which we use, either a human or a team of humans, or another piece of software which is used to verify the proof. But who verifies the verifier? You have this infinite regressive verifiers, where more compute gets you more likelihood of success, but at the end of the day, if a system makes 1 billion decisions a minute, and you only make 1 error in 1 billion, you're not going to be error-free for very long. There are many different proposals for government regulation of those systems, but they're usually somewhat behind in catching up to technology, and it's very difficult to come up with good ways to do something about a system capable of killing everyone. Fines don't work. I heard proposals for insurance. That also seems to be limited in its impact. So while I strongly encourage all such efforts, I don't think we'll have a policy solution to a technical problem. In case you like such impossibility results, we have a paper with about 50 of them published, so you can read a lot more about tools I wish I had, but probably won't have. It doesn't mean that I need all those tools. Sometimes you can use a screwdriver instead of a hammer, but it seems like there is a lot of impossibility results in this space. So that leads us to likelihood that control itself may be impossible. And depending how we define control, either direct control, where you give orders to the system. This is the famous genie problem, right? You get 3 wishes, and then your second wish is to undo the first one. Alternative is you go, okay, this system is smarter than me. It knows me well. It has a model of me. I'll just trust it to make decisions for me. It's an ideal advisor system. You may be happy with it, but you're definitely not in control at that point. So we have this trade-off between either making systems more capable or retaining control over them. And it seems like for many definitions of control, we're not going to get something we would be happy with. And we were able to publish it both in academic journals and in popular magazines. So I think this idea that we cannot indefinitely control superintelligent machines is not so novel. Alan Turing, the founding father of computation and AI research, said as much, and many more modern scholars agree. Elon Musk agrees. Ray Kurzweil in his book has a chapter about safety issues, and he definitely doesn't think we'll be able to directly control smarter machines. There is a lot of ideas being proposed. Quite a few books have been published. Maybe you've seen Bostrom's book, Superintelligence, was a New York Times bestseller. I had a few collections with different scholars where they talked about different proposals from economics, policy, law, different domains in terms of what can be done. My more recent book summarizes some of the impossibility results I have talked about here. If you don't want to buy the book, all these papers are available for free. You can just get them on explainability and predictability and so on. But what is the state of the art here? This is a survey I did on my social media for a bunch of nerds who follow me on Twitter and Facebook. So they know the topic, but they may not be all working in the area. There are different answers, different possibilities. Only a third thinks that we will be able to control superintelligent machines. I'll ask you right now, raise your hand if you think we'll be able to indefinitely control superintelligent machines. I kind of anchored you a little, but last time in a group of 250 people, there was 0 hands. This time I have 3 hands with anchoring at 30%. Cool. You are the only hope. So what is the outcome then? So-called P-doom, probability that things will go really, really poorly. I get in trouble for this number a lot, but I want you to notice that there is no dates in this. It is a prediction set about infinite interval. So it's not so crazy. If you ask me about a year or two, my numbers are very different. But here's what a lot of people think. There is a 20 to 30% chance that it will not end well, depending on your definition of not ending well. Those are top scholars, leaders of safety groups, leaders of AI labs, CEOs of those companies. So this is the state-of-the-art human assessment of how difficult that problem is going to be. Average for AI safety researchers from different conferences is at about 30%. I recently did an interview for Lex Friedman, and I told him I'm very concerned. I have high P-doom, and he said, well, next time I'll talk to some optimists who think it's only 20%. This is insane. Anything above Jan LeCun is insane for all of humanity dies. We should not be at those numbers. What we are trying to do is to build a perpetual motion machine in software, a perpetual safety device. Not only do I need to get GPT-5 to be bug-free, I need GPT-5, 6, 7, 20, 30 to be bug-free. The main difference between superintelligence safety and cybersecurity is that you get many opportunities to try again with cybersecurity. I can give you a new password if yours is hacked. I can reissue credit cards. But if X risk happens to materialize, you don't get a second chance. So we get one chance to get every future iteration of that system working in the real world with malevolent actors, with insider threats, with self-learning, with all the things we talked about in terms of impossibility results, not happening even once. It seems that it would be a good idea to maybe slow down, given the predicted timelines, likelihood of events happening, and negative outcomes. Then I suggest that we should slow down. I mean, in terms of creating general AI superintelligence systems, not narrow systems which are incredibly useful, and we had great success using them for solving real-world problems like protein folding. Then I mention it, people usually respond by saying, well, if we don't do it, then our competitors will get there first. And it's a valid response when we talk about narrow systems. They are very useful for competing in domains such as military competition, economic competition. But if we are talking about next level, we are talking about superintelligence out of control, it doesn't matter who creates it first. The outcome is going to be the same. So while it's important to not allow competitors to get advantage, it's more important to make sure that the outcome is not worse than what we are trying to prevent. So how am I doing on time? Perfect. Let's answer some easy questions.
Thanks so much for your talk. I already said it would be more depressing than Stuart Russell, but it definitely was worthwhile. And I learned a lot, and probably you too. And I wonder if there are any questions in the audience. We have about 15 minutes for some questions. Yeah, maybe here on the left. Yeah.
Maybe some optimism. Why is your P-doom not 100?
I was told you should never do 100. It makes you look irrational. No, what I'm talking about, so if you ask me what is my P-doom for 1 year, I'll tell you it's 10%. If you ask 2 years, 3 years, 20, 30, it keeps asymptotically getting closer to it, but as long as we are existing as universe, we're not going to be that confident. There is still a possibility that I'm wrong, we'll get lucky and have a huge war, something will happen.
There's a very, very, very small chance. That's the optimism we'll get.
So you're telling me there is a chance?
You're telling me there's a chance. Other questions? I saw some hands raised over there. Yeah, you, sir.
So thank you for your talk. Very interesting. I want to go back to the very beginning, where you made a premise saying GPT-4, then GPT-5, maybe it's GPT-6 will also do chess, playing chess, and then maybe go to general AI, right? But for now, GPT-4 can make maybe 10 moves in chess, and then it goes haywire and just makes random moves, right? Do you believe there will be a new revolution of kind of model instead of the transformer model being used right now before GPT can actually play chess correctly? Because now it just predicts the next word, right? And because there are so many chess games online.
So there is some disagreement on how many big breakthroughs we need to get there. If scaling hypothesis is true, we just need to scale existing models. They get better. If you look at how many chess moves GPT-2, 3, 4 could do, it does go up. Even if it's not the case and we need different architecture, there is no shortage of novel proposals coming out daily. I can't even keep up with all of them. What I want you to separate is specific skills versus general ability to learn. So I don't play every game in the world, I don't speak every language, I don't play every musical instrument, but if needed, I can pick up the right tool. So there is software to play chess. An agent, which is general, can use that software, can use a calculator, and that's what we're starting to see. Generality is going up. It may not be capable in everything, but none of us are. A lot of times we expect a lot more from this software than we expect from humans. People constantly saying, oh, it's so dumb, it couldn't solve this like one unique trick problem, I did it. Have you tried giving it to 100 strangers on the street? How many of them can do it? So as long as we have no pro-human bias and treat those systems the way Shane Leck proposed for definition of intelligence, ability to win in multiple domains. If you average out over all the things it does, it's already smarter than all of us. It speaks hundreds of languages, it can generate art, it can do mathematics, astronomy, and so on. I don't think any one of us can compete in all those domains.
Thank you. Other questions here? Yeah. Microphone coming up.
Thank you for the talk, Roman. I'm wondering, we can't look inside an AI, but I'm curious. I first want to look inside your own mind. Could you explain to me what brought you to this worry of AI? Was this more fear rising on the conceptual level? It will eventually get this smart and it will be smarter than us. Or have there maybe been specific events in your life where you felt like this might be worrisome? So could you talk a bit more on the origin of your own mind, why the worry of AI came?
The drive, where does it come from?
That is very interesting. So my PhD was on behavioral biometrics, and I was specifically looking at online poker bots. Not very scary or exciting, but as I was doing my research, we were becoming more and more capable. And I like data, I like progression, I like to see what happens with it in 5 years, 10 years. If at some point it's smarter than me, can I still defeat them? That's basically a logical conclusion from taking existing data and projecting it forward.
Thank you.
Pure analysis. Yeah, here, sir.
What is not clear to me, because we're talking about superintelligence and not super dumbness, do you think that an eventual destruction of our planet would be an accident, which cannot be prevented by superintelligence, which you wouldn't expect because it's so super intelligent? Or do you think there's a chance that the superintelligence AI comes to the rational conclusion that it's better to end it all?
So I cannot predict what superintelligence will do, but at no point am I assuring you that the planet will be destroyed. The humanity may be in a state we're unhappy with. Malevolent use, accident, on purpose, misunderstanding preferences. So again, I'm always asked, how would it kill everyone? It has no hands. And the problem is you asking me how I would kill everyone, and I can tell you about, nanotech and synthetic bio and nuclear weapons. That's not what it would do. It's 1,000 times smarter. It would come up with novel ways of doing it. But even if it's well-meaning, there are negative outcomes. So there is a whole set of philosophical thought about negative utilitarians and avoiding suffering. The best way to avoid all suffering is to have no one available to suffer.
It's a very dire and hard conclusion.
Yes.
Let's not put that on the X. Yep. You, sir. Oh, yeah. You'll be next.
Yeah, maybe a bit more pragmatic question. What would you recommend for those 2 or 3 optimists who are in the room to work on in case of AI security, safety and security?
We don't have enough people working on determining if a problem is solvable. Then I say it's impossible. Yeah, I have 100 papers, 5 books, whatever. Nobody buys it. If there is a whole community of people verifying those results independently and going, yeah, that really changes the equation. Self-interest is a big deal. If heads of those companies, rich young people with their whole lives ahead of them, realize that they cannot win by pushing that button, that might make a difference.
So your message is not meant to cause fatalism, but to inspire.
Sure, yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah. Take that home. Yeah.
Yeah, many thanks. I will also be on the panel, and we have opportunity to exchange views. But maybe for now, I agree with a lot of what you said and part of the pessimism. But might there be kind of a scenario that you haven't mentioned where we don't end up solving the control problem, but we slow down, we muddle through, this entire process ends up taking decades or centuries, and we end up in a kind of symbiosis where we don't call the shots, but actually we're better off than ever before, right? So because with humans in power also things can go wrong. So maybe something that when I started to think about this as a philosopher of technology, that is what I would intuitively have regarded as the best outcome. I now tend to think it's a bit unlikely, but do you also have that on the radar as a possibility?
The symbiosis scenario.
A kind of symbiosis scenario, yeah, where we...
So maybe two answers to that. I don't think merging with this technology will be a long-term solution. Right now we have something to offer. So it would make sense to have brain-computer interface, access to internet, memory. Once the system is superior to us in every way, you become a biological bottleneck, you have nothing to contribute, the system kind of implicitly or explicitly takes you out. But there is something I thought about in terms of game theoretic strategic reasons. Maybe it's better for superintelligence not to take over as soon as it can, but to delay it for a couple decades to build strategic advantage. It has a lot of time, it's immortal, so it can wait. So maybe we'll get lucky and it's like, I'm going to be very powerful superintelligence before I do something. So, yeah.
Right.
Self-interest is huge.
Okay. So little hope there. Yeah, let me see. There was, yeah.
Thank you very much. Great talk, great slides. I was wondering, what do you think are the biggest obstacles currently towards achieving AGI? In the sense of replacing a remote worker.
To get to AGI, I used
Technical obstacles.
If scalability hypothesis is true, you just need a lot more compute. You don't have a technical problem left, you have a money problem left to buy all that compute from NVIDIA. It used to be we made predictions in terms of in 10 years, in 20 years. Now I think it's in terms of, do you have $1 trillion of compute? No, wait a little longer. Next year, do you have 100 billion of compute? That's how much it is to AGI.
So the only obstacle is computing power.
Maybe data, but it seems like we can synthesize data, self-play, and other approaches, yeah.
Yeah, you, sir.
Yeah, I have a question about not superintelligence AI, but what you call narrow algorithms. Because how I see it, they already have some threat because they change how we basically perceive the world, right? Recommendation systems, maybe use model to make summarization of the text. So basically it also impacts our development, right? How we perceive things. So how do you see this problem, which I think is already here, compared to superintelligence, which we are not achieved yet, and we don't know when we achieve it yet?
There is a lot of problems we already have right now with existing systems. There is algorithmic bias, unemployment, all sorts of things a lot of people are working on. There is no shortage. I think they had a meeting of AI ethics group in this room right before us, and it was an hour full room. So there is a lot of interest in it. I am more interested in things fewer people work on. So with those impossibility results, there is like 1.5 people in the world trying to do something. With the other problem, there is thousands of experts looking at recommender systems, how to remove bias from those systems, how it impacts childhood education, and so on.
So there's more gains to be made in that research area.
It seems like there is room for another me.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, you had a question here.
Hi, thanks for the talk, it was amazing. I was thinking, if it is inevitable of PDoom and that kind of stuff, what paths would be more desirable and which less? So should we let proprietary systems create AGI, like OpenAI, so it's closed source, or is it better to let everyone see and contribute to this thing? And at the same time, should we enforce better regulations on a global level, and how should we do that? Or should we focus more on education and that kind of stuff? Yeah.
So open source historically has been preferred for safer software. I think this being like a weapon, an intelligence weapon, open sourcing it is giving weapons to psychopaths. So that's probably not the best approach. Government regulation, again, is useful for slowing things down. If there is enough red tape and different legislative processes, you take money from compute and give it to lawyers. That's a good thing.
This is a relevant question because we're going to have 3 parliamentarians on the stage afterwards, so they maybe take
your job.
Home. Yeah, we have room for 2 more questions. Yeah, you there, sir.
Hi, thank you for the talk. I was wondering, you're clearly in the PDoom camp with a high percentage of certainty. I was wondering, because there's quite a large landscape of different insights and on this matter, are there like 1 or 2 opinions which you found most convincing of the other camp, and which one are them?
So like Yudkowsky is at 99.99. I think that's reasonable. I don't think he's crazy. He's actually an optimist. He thinks that given enough time, the problem is solvable. So I hope he's right.
Hello, thank you for the talk. Do you think alignment is solvable from a technical perspective, like technical AI safety, or do you think we should work more on governance instead?
So alignment, at least the way I see it, is not defined. We have not agreed on what it is we're aligning systems to. We, as 8 billion independent agents, plus all the animals and aliens, don't agree on anything, really. The 2 of us would probably find so many disagreements. So we're trying to make a system understand fuzzy concepts, which if we had this like a book of human values, and we just had to program it in C++ or something like that, that would be very hard. Concepts like good, safe, alive are super fuzzy. But it's harder than that. We have no agreement, and we keep changing values. What was valued 500 years ago today is considered child abuse or something like that, right? So it's impossibility on top of impossibility. So I don't see a successful resolution anytime soon.
On that note, we're going to close this first part. Thank you so much. I give a warm applause to Roman. And have a seat. And I'd like to welcome the 6 panelists that are in the audience still, but please take the floor. And I'll introduce them one by one. Well, we had 3 parliamentarians, all responsible for digitalization issues, amongst them AI. Jesse Six Dijkstra, Member of Parliament for NSC. Queeny Rajkowski for the VVD, and Marieke Koekkoek, Member of Parliament for Volt. Thanks for coming. Two researchers, Simon Friederich, you already took the floor briefly with your question. We're going to hear more from you. You're Associate Professor of Philosophy of Science at the University College of Groningen. And Tim Bakker, who was also here last time. You're an AI PhD candidate at the University of Amsterdam and former intern at Facebook AI. So we have an insider here. And Qualcomm, I should say. And last but not least, Lisa Gotoh, Senior Policy Officer, Cyber at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Just maybe a quick round to start with. We just heard the talk of Roman. On the scale of P-Doom, where are we here? Who scores 99% or higher? 90, 80, 70, 60? No? Okay, yeah? All right. Slow raise of hands here, yeah. But quickly, just give me a brief impression of your gut feeling during this talk. What was in your head? Maybe, Queeny, could you start?
Gut feeling. Well, maybe not gut feeling, but of course, if you ask, is there a possibility? Then when you look at it from a philosophical perspective, there's always a possibility. And then I look at my responsibility, and I see that as being a parliamentarian, making sure that the risks and the dangers of AI are controlled, and making sure that the innovative part, you know, everything that AI promises us to solve, that there are rules set to make sure that we can solve those big problems. Because AI promises us to solve climate change, for instance, but when I look at the big companies or the tech companies that are developing AI, I do not see them solving climate change. I see them making toast machines that can make your toast in the morning, but I can do that myself, but I cannot fix climate change. So that's what that's my perspective.
That's your role as a parliamentarian.
Yes.
You see it.
Yeah.
Yes, I see you nod a lot, so maybe you agree?
Yeah, I agree mostly with Queeny. I'm a bit more optimistic than Roman is, and I think it's for mainly two reasons. And the two reasons are resources and the human condition. And I actually believe that we should take AI risks very seriously, but I also do believe that we will lose control of some AI systems prior to them reaching superintelligence. So things will go wrong, we will have many societal disruptions, but that is prior to the point where we have a level of AI that we absolutely cannot control. And I think we will learn from that. And then maybe someday we will wake up and the general public will feel the consequences and see we need to do something about AI. And then I think a more diplomatic approach will start to arise. We will stop allocating resources to things that are super dangerous on extinction level AI. And I think we will reach a point where we can start developing AI that is good for humanity, since, and then I'll get to the point of the human condition, pretty much every government in the entire world does not want to let go of its control. So developing AI systems that are out of our control, maybe the market will do it, but the governments will not.
It's a red line for many governments.
Yeah, I think it will be. So I'm a bit more optimistic on that part.
How about you?
So I think, first off, I don't believe in unsolvable problems. So that's an assumption, I admit. But if I would believe otherwise, I think you could quit your job as a politician. What I do think, and I agree with my colleagues here, is that we need to focus more on how it develops. And I personally believe that as Europe, we need a better grip on how technology develops. So we need to invest more in actually understanding the technology, not using it from elsewhere, and then developing it further, but really just from the base up, build it up. Because then you can, at least you have a chance of instilling your own values in the technology that you use. Therefore, to reach that, we need the resources, we need the people, we need the money to do that. So we need to invest more in the innovations that would make that possible. Right now, Europe is really dependent on others for its technology. We need to bring that back. And that requires cooperation between the European countries. And I think we need an international framework that goes beyond the summit that we now have. And that's mainly because I believe that with AI, I think we have a similar situation on our hands as with nuclear power. As humankind, we developed something that might be useful, that might be an existential threat, and so we cannot just let it develop uncontrolled. And I think with nuclear power, you saw a similar situation where we barely sort of saved ourselves by having an international agency, having a regulatory framework, what we can do, what we can't do, and also having control on who has it and who can develop it. Same with AI. We don't want AI to control undeveloped, develop uncontrolled, and also not, for example, have it in the hands of non-state actors. So I think those three things might give us a chance. And as I say, I don't believe in unsolvable problems.
Well, that's a good working hypothesis as a politician, I guess. Simon.
Right. Can you hear me? This one. Okay. Yeah. So I came to these questions as someone with a pretty techno-optimistic overall outlook. For instance, having looked at what Marieke mentioned, nuclear energy and how we might have missed opportunities to enable its potential more to help mitigate climate change. And then my initial hope was a bit what I just sketched in my question, that we would kind of find a place for advanced AI systems in society and coexist with them, a bit like a super academia. However, our descendants would do that, but I have grown much more pessimistic, much more in line with thinking about it for months and months and reading more and more about it. Like Roman, I think you left out a couple of steps, I think, or you just hinted at them in your talk. I just want to highlight one thing. I mean, to the extent that our society works, it's partly because each of us, not each of us, but many of us, in virtue of their skills that they have learned through hard work and education, have bargaining power, right? So we have the now, especially with the demographic situation, like there's every one of us, especially young people, have a lot of bargaining power because they are needed for jobs and so on, and especially for cognitive skills. But that this kind of bargaining power is, I think, is set to go away on those circumstances. And I can't really see, or maybe I can imagine ways in which this is okay for power balance and for liberal democracy, or what we hold dear. But I think the default case is that this does not go well. And in that sense, I have a pretty high, not as high as Roman, but I have a very high, I'm very worried, about what will happen in the next few years and decades to the power balance, to the bargaining power of people like me and people who have kids and everything.
You were on 60% of the P-Doom scale, I believe, right? Yeah. Lisa, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I'm more optimistic, but I've probably read less about it than you. But also, I work in international diplomacy, and there are a lot of global issues that seem unresolvable, but that isn't a reason to continue working on it and strive for global cooperation to solve world issues. And I think with AI, we see it is a very new topic, especially AI safety on the international agenda. So a lot of effort now initially goes into building a common understanding. What is this technology? What is the impact going to be? And that is also what we need before we go into negotiations about treaties, because if we don't know what we are talking about, we can't start negotiations and building real frameworks that are effective. And I have confidence that there is increasing acknowledgement. I think, as Roman said at the beginning, 10 years ago, he wouldn't have been invited for these type of talks. We have 3 parliamentarians who are interested to come speak here. So yeah, that's why I'm optimistic.
Okay. Last, you, Tim.
So thoughts about the talk. I hadn't looked at those P-Doom values for a while, and I was very interested to see that the AI safety researchers are at around 30%, because I think that's also where my gut feeling is. But I don't know, somehow this talk also gave me a bit of hope, exactly for the reason you mentioned, that we couldn't really have talked about this 10 years ago. I remember, like in my lab 5 years ago, like as a PhD student, I was talking about this to my colleagues, and they all kind of looked at me weirdly. And then ChatGPT came out, and then I got a lot of questions about, oh, so about this AI safety stuff, what is going on there? What do you think? And I don't know if the problem is very solvable or how we would go about doing that, but the fact that we can talk about it and the fact that so many researchers now also say, look, this is really an issue. We have like the top 3 cited researchers in AI all saying, I think AI could be an existential risk, we should do something about that. That's not really a status quo I would have imagined 5 years ago, so that's hopeful, I suppose.
So there's more awareness, and that's, well, at least partially reason for optimism.
Yeah.
And we all here in the audience may more or less agree, and we're somewhere on the P-doom scale, but there are actually people that disagree and that think that superintelligence will not emerge or can be controlled. I just wonder, or that there are more pressing issues with artificial intelligence in the here and now that deserve more focus, and existential risk and the talk about that actually diverts that focus away from these pressing and more short-term concerns. And I just wonder what you think about that criticism. Who wants to respond? Yeah.
Yes, sure. I think it's valid. I think there are very many pressing issues considering artificial intelligence that do need to be addressed now. Of course, there are also, like when we're talking about military purpose AI, that's getting near existential risk, but that's more on the warfare part. But also in the civilian part, I think there are serious risks concerned with surveillance capitalism, so for how the market is using targeted advertising and conglomerating online user data, and how it can be used to a much larger extent using artificial intelligence, but also in fields of disinformation and deepfakes. I think there's a very real possibility that in 1 or 2 years we'll be entering a new crisis of trust, since all the systems that we've been learning to trust over the last 20 years cannot be trusted to the same extent that they can be right now. So I think we do need to focus on those parts as well, and that's probably more within the span of control of us politicians. Not fully, but a bit more.
Can I add to that?
Sure.
So when it comes to disinformation, deepfake, I think that, of course, AI is, plays a big part in it, but if you see this year, a lot of people worldwide will have the availability to vote. And the thing is that the more you talk about disinformation and about deepfake, the more you want to maybe educate or tell people about the warnings. Don't trust what you see. Social media has rabbit holes, etc., etc. The more people not only start to distrust what they see, but they also start to distrust the regular media. So they start to distrust the whole system. So that's a strange thing. You want to make people aware that there can be manipulation online, and the result is, because they did all this research, that people start to not trust, distrust everyone. And that's actually not the thing that you want to accomplish. So there are still some, from a politician perspective, from a parliamentarian perspective, I think here are still some challenges. How do you make sure that that everyone knows what's happening without distrusting the whole system and then going to vote for a new government? Because that can be tricky, as we've seen in the past.
Walk a tight balance there, yeah, Lisa?
Yeah, I could maybe add from the global discussion perspective. So you see that AI development is very much concentrated. The biggest investments are in the US and China, and it's also with big tech companies, so not even states. Because of this concentration of power, if you look at discussions, for instance, at the UN, yes, the majority of countries are not preoccupied with AI because they are preoccupied with conflict, with climate change, with global health and development issues, the aftermath of COVID. So also when you want to work towards really international consensus building and a framework, I think it's really important to realize that we have also a long way to go to really engage all the actors that are less invested in AI, but will undergo the impact of AI. We saw the same with climate change, and we need to engage them in the discussions to work together to a solution.
I think that is the most important thing. So when we look, for example, at climate change, we knew in the 70s already, or in the 60s actually, that we were facing an existential risk. And now we're living in it. And I think that's the most important thing before you can raise awareness among policymakers that are not the experts, like many of you in the room, but are the unaware policymakers that have to juggle with a lot of things. And that is why we have to already address this as if it can be an existential risk. Not because you want to instill fear in people, or if you not to speed up a potential problem and make it an actual problem, but because you want to be ready when it's there. And I think if we had addressed climate change in that way, we would not have had the problems that we face today.
And I just wonder, I mean, obviously it's a good sign that we're all here today, and 10 years ago probably the room would have been empty. But are you guys optimistic about the trend here? Because still, if I talk about existential risks of AI, one of my favorite topics, at a dinner party, people look at me like, you know, I'm talking sci-fi. So there still seems to be a lot of ground to be gained here. Just a brief reaction on that. Do you think we're on the right way here, and can we be optimistic about this, or is there still a world to be gained?
No, I think at least there is I assign a relatively large probability to things developing so quickly that we will not be ready by any means. Like as you say about your experiences at parties or so, when I opened up to my PhD students about what I think like is the most likely challenge to them having good bargaining power on the job market afterwards, which is related to this, they are very surprised. And they are well-informed people. So yeah, no, I think. So I mean, it depends on the timelines, of course, and maybe I think actually this was a very nice point, Jesse, that you made. So that something might go wrong with impressive systems, yeah, such that society realized, okay, now shit has hit the fan or so, and then. Yeah, I don't know at what time scale then a reaction can occur, and what.
We maybe need some small disasters to head off the big one.
Yes, it would be very interesting. It's a very good.
To elaborate a bit more on that, you put Stuxnet on the slides, and I don't know if anyone in the audience knows it, but Stuxnet was the large cyber incident. I think it was 2004, 2006, somewhere in that approach, where they launched, I think, a duplicating malware on industrial control systems within a nuclear facility, and it spread to other places in the world. And it had effects that we could not imagine prior to that time, like cyber warfare suddenly became existential and physical. But we did learn from that. Suddenly people woke up, and large cybersecurity programs started to arise from that point on. And things went wrong, but it didn't go disastrous. And I think maybe for AI the same thing will happen. At some point we will have a system that we put in, we'll have an AI that we put in some sort of system, and we give it some level of own autonomous control, and we learn from it. Things will go wrong, and maybe, I hope not, but people will get hurt at that point. I hope they won't, but at some point we'll start to realize, oh, maybe we don't want to give away that point of control. And then both society and governments will start to realize, well, maybe this is the red button. Maybe we need to stop going in that direction and instead develop some AI in which we have that span of control and which can be used for specialized purposes such as healthcare, in which it's very useful.
So a wake-up call, basically.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, can I add that? I agree with the part that you say that maybe some other accidents will happen prior to some existential accident. I agree with that, but I'm a bit hesitant when it comes to will they be opened after that incident? Because on one hand you could say Stuxnet opened our eyes, but did it? Like some people, yeah. So I think our eyes are opened, but I'm not sure if everyone's eyes are opened. And I imagine the same with AI. So I'm not sure if an accident will happen, that we will learn from it in a way that will prevent the next accident. Because as humans, we're not really good at it.
So we have elections today, and we had elections, well, what is it, a couple of weeks ago, months ago. I read the Hoofdlijnenakkoord recently. Have you read it? Well, if you're looking for AI, you won't find much there. There's actually one line in there, and let me just quote it. Hier. Gebruik van AI, artificiële intelligentie, door de overheid biedt voordelen, maar wordt ook aan voorwaarden gebonden, zodat veiligheid, privacy en rechtsbescherming geborgd zijn. Nou, punt. So the whole word AI is mentioned only once, and in this specific sentence. But it sounds rather meager, especially if you're concerned about existential risks of AI. No mention of that there. Does it say anything about the importance of AI and existential risks, maybe, for the incoming government? At least that's the question that I had on my mind. And it happens that we have two parliamentarians from two, incoming government parties. So I thought maybe this is a good question for you two. How is the concern of AI safety issues in the incoming government? Can you give us a sneak peek?
Yeah, of course. So I'm not sure if everyone knows about the Hoofdlijnenakkoord, but it's the agreement that we made as a future coalition about some things that we want to achieve, or things we don't want to achieve, etc. Our political agreements. So before this agreement, the thing was that everything that you want to achieve, you will put inside the document. And now we said, no, we think it's more important that the actual parliamentarians, so every political party, not only the parties who are in the coalition, can think about what do we need to do for the Netherlands. Yeah. So that's why we said we're not going to have a coalition agreement, but a Hoofdlijnenakkoord. I'm not sure what the English word will be for it. I can only think of wrong words. Don't translate it literally. Now we said, so we only want to write down things as minimum as possible to make sure that we can discuss and debate things.
But so still, that's only mentioned once, so that's, yeah?
Yeah, but yeah, of course. But so people get mad when we make all these agreements, and then people say, oh, but you made all these agreements, now the politicians cannot debate anything, there's no room left. So now we said, okay, we will make little agreements, and now it's not good because we didn't discuss. So
there's a lot of room for debate in the parliament.
Yeah, but also if it's not mentioned in the Hoofdlijnenakkoord, it doesn't mean that it's not important or anything.
Exactly.
It's just something that we as the four parties have not made any hard agreements about. Exactly. It doesn't mean that the new cabinet cannot make any new policy about it, because they will be coming with their own, what do you call it, accord?
Policy, agreements.
Registration.
Yeah.
Yeah. And well, I hope AI will be in there, and we'll have a good new member of the cabinet that will take these kind of risks and opportunities both seriously.
And just maybe jumping to AI research. We have quite some researchers, well, here on the stage, but also in the audience. Maybe, one question that you could pose is, why should we spend money on AI research at all? If doomsday is coming, why don't we just sit back, relax, and watch the show? And we're a small country after all. The Netherlands is, a small player. We have great research institutes and great researchers, but there are other countries that have much better systems to develop new AI or research them. What can we actually add? That's a question maybe for the two researchers here on the stage.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would say is there's a lot to do. Enough research problems to go around. So I don't think it's the case that we should leave everything to the people that are best equipped, that have the strongest AI systems. I think there's a lot of safety research you can do without having access to those systems directly. I think the second thing is maybe a bit more of an international responsibility. We, as the Netherlands, have ASML, ASML is at the ground floor of the supply chain for all these systems, right? You need enormous GPU clusters to train very powerful AI systems. Those GPUs are mostly developed by NVIDIA, and the chips for that are made by machines that ASML makes. And there's no one else who can really do that, at least not on that level. And so I don't know how international politics works, but I imagine that gives us at least some kind of bargaining position. And that means we do want the kind of in-house expertise on safety issues to actually guide that well and exploit that well. And one way of getting that is by spending all this research funds on AI safety, both technical and governmental.
Does international politics work like that, Lisa?
Yes. Maybe just like one way that you can see it is that the UK organized the first AI safety summit in November, and they selected 36 states worldwide to join, and the Netherlands was one of them. So.
Just to add to that, we're uniquely situated in the Netherlands. This is where the so-called internet cable enters Europe. That makes us uniquely situated for the technological development of AI. And as I said, we do have the skills in Europe. I agree, we shouldn't do it in the Netherlands alone, and I don't know why you would want to limit yourself to that. We have the whole continent, with not just with bright minds, but also the resources. And I don't think if it comes to something that you deem as a potential existential risk, that you should leave it to others to develop it. You should want to know and understand perfectly what it does and what it can do, what it shouldn't do. And that is why the Netherlands, but whole of Europe, should really focus on developing this. Because now the US and China are basically playing the game, and we're sitting back thinking we're too small to make a difference. And we're not. We should make the difference.
Should speed up our game. Simon, do you agree?
Yeah, I don't have anything really interesting to say, but this is such a crucial technology, and of course having expertise on the continent on it, and somehow to shape its development seems like a good idea.
And I also think that, so as the Netherlands or as Europe, we're not going to win the AI battle with China or with the United States. Even if we say we have loads of money that we will put in research now, we're too far behind, and we do not have that much money if you compare it to China and the United States. But there's one thing that Europe and the Netherlands can actually do really well, and that's talk about norms, values, and standards. When you look at the GDPR, of course, you can say maybe it's not 100% of an example of a good legislation, but it did actually achieve that when companies want to do business in Europe, they have to comply with the privacy rules that we have set in the GDPR. So I think if we will focus on that, the AI for good, or make sure that the norms and values that we hold highly dearly, that if we will focus our research money on that, we can actually achieve something. So we need to prioritize instead of generalize. Yeah.
And Lisa, this is actually work that you are involved in, or your ministry is at least involved in. Can you maybe give us a sneak peek what's at the front here? What is like the next big agreement that we're working on?
Well, maybe it's actually nice to reflect, because last month we had two first ever legally binding instruments. One is the EU AI Act, and the other is the Council of Europe International Treaty for AI, which is not only negotiated by the Council of Europe members, but also the EU and 11 non-members, including the United States, Japan, Canada. So it is actually, maybe that's also why I'm optimistic. You see that in smaller coalitions, there are steps being taken to develop the legal framework. It is really getting to an international treaty at the UN level with all 193 states. That is a process that you work towards to. But I think the fact that we've already agreed on this, the first ever legally binding frameworks in which the Netherlands also very actively engaged to set these standards, is a really good start.
At the same time, if I'm correct, in many of these agreements, existential risks of AI is not specifically mentioned. Is that correct?
Yes.
And why is it so, and will it change?
Well, I can see in the future, But I think I would come back maybe to what I mentioned earlier, that if you want to make effective legislation, you also need to take the interests of the other parties into account. And because there's such a imbalance in AI powers, AI capacity, talking about human extinction or existential risk is not necessarily a political, attractive narrative. So I think if we want to convince others about the importance of AI, there are other ways to convince them, which will still add to the effort to prevent existential risk.
Maybe to just as a final question for you guys, and then the floor can enter. We talked a lot about risks here, especially existential risk, but there are also a lot of opportunities that AI could give us in the even near future. Can you maybe just share your thoughts on that? What are like the big gains that can be made with AI in the near future, Tim?
Well, I think it's come up a few times already, and this is really about more narrow AI systems, where I think a lot of the, at least existential danger comes from more general systems that maybe have their own goals or that can at least agentically act in the world. And much more narrow systems, for instance, for like protein folding, as was mentioned, or medical applications, material science. I mean, there's a lot of potential there. You can really improve the lives of many people with those kinds of technologies. Solving climate change could be also one where AI helps. So I think focusing on those kinds of technologies is really valuable, and we should definitely keep doing that.
Yeah. Okay, Lisa? Anything to add here to that long list of potential gains?
I think AI has huge potential to advance the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which is the biggest framework that we agreed for international development. And I think actually that is also how maybe the majority, if you look at the UN, looks at it. They see AI and digitalization broader as an opportunity. Yeah, I think it's also important to balance that discussion if you want to have an inclusive discussion.
So AI-powered SDGs, yeah? Simon.
Yeah, these were all good points. And something else that I sometimes think about, I don't know whether it's just opportunity or good news, but I can imagine that if indeed the decisive further breakthroughs or the scale-up towards superintelligent systems happens in the US, I guess that would, I mentioned power balance, right, within society first, but that would, I guess, have a huge impact on global power balance, whether the US could really control that or would be, it's like its economic or military power would then be controlled by something, but I guess that would, might have ramifications for the conflict with Russia or so. I don't know in which way, but I'm curious what will happen if that occurs, like within the next few years or decade or so.
Yeah. So it may have geopolitical ramifications as well. Yeah, Marieke.
I think the main thing is to understand AI has potential, and it can cause unimaginable grievances. It can cause greatness. What we need to do is to decide what we want to use AI for. You spoke already about smart toasters. I don't think you should use AI for that. Why not? Well, many reasons, but one important reason is AI costs quite a lot of energy, and that is something right now that we don't produce sustainable yet. So then you actually contribute to the climate crisis by making smart toasters. So we have to make up our minds, what do we want to solve? If we can focus on that, for example, have a regulatory framework in place that says we're going to solve the SDGs. Perfect, if that is our focus. But now there's no focus, and I think it's up to the regulators to make that focus, because yeah, that's our job.
I feel like I'm the only one that wants a smart toaster here. Yes.
Yeah, I think many sensible things have been said already, and to add to that, maybe, I think we need to stop with the discussion. We need to use AI because AI is new and savvy and it's cool and every company in the world needs to use it. I think we actually do need to start thinking about how to use those resources and energy wisely. And I think there is quite a big opportunity in the Netherlands to expand more on AI research, precisely for the reasons that Marieke said. We are an internet connection point, and we do have a pretty good tech scheme in the Netherlands. So I think we need to use that in a way that it actually benefits the environment that is located in. So maybe it can be in some part of any province in the Netherlands in a way that it will expand on the wealth of the community. And so also schools and infrastructure and houses can be built based on all the jobs that can be created from new niche AI appliances, for instance, in healthcare or in climate science. And I think that's the way forward, and also the part where for us as parliamentarians, as politicians, it's something that we do need to focus on in the upcoming years.
Queenie?
Yeah, I think one of the things where there are many examples already mentioned, but one of the things that I found very hopeful is personalized medicine. Because when you look at healthcare, then a lot of the research is based on a male white body. And that's not how the world looks. So I'm actually hopeful that AI can contribute when used in the right way to make sure that everyone gets the right medication or treatment designed for their body. So in that way, AI can be very hopeful. I think AI will be in everything. So the good, the bad, the ugly, just in everything. And it's up to us to make sure that before all of the legislation that has been mentioned is actually in place, because the AI Act is agreed upon, but the last parts of the AI Act will only start in, I think, the end of 2027. So for me, the biggest concern is how can we control or check what companies like OpenAI, what they're doing, when we do not have legislation at hand to actually go there and tell them, okay, let us see what you have here, what you're doing. Oh, this is not good, this is right, you have to stop with this. So I'm more looking in that technology is going faster than we can legislate. So that will be the biggest concern for me. So I'm actually working and asking also the minister and the cabinet to make sure that we have like an AI advisory board with a scientist, but also maybe companies, etc. People who want to advise the government that before we have legislation, how can we make sure that we use the AI for good and we can prevent some risk? Because I think a lot will happen between now and 2027.
Maybe there's a seat for you there, Roman. In this.
No, no.
So let's have some question and answers from the audience. We have about 10 minutes. Yeah, and we have a microphone. And Roman, feel free to join the discussion.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question for the optimists. So I hear there's quite some optimism because the problem is getting some traction, and if we just throw enough money and manpower at it, we can eventually solve the problem. But my question is, do you at least think there's some sort of tipping point, so a point of no return, where AI becomes too advanced and too volatile to control, and we can't really pull the plug or learn from our mistakes anymore? And does that give this problem some urgency to you at least?
Will there be a tipping point? And maybe also, how would we know that we've reached it? Yeah?
Did we already cross that point? Because there is not a there's not a button we can press to say let's stop AI. I know there's some people in the audience who would like to. I know that they want to pause AI, and I can imagine like maybe a temporarily pause of development, but not everyone in the whole wide world will listen to that. So I think we're actually past the point that we can pull the plug on AI. No, because if it's an existential risk, it's something else. Because if you cannot pull the plug, it doesn't mean only bad things will happen.
My answer to your question would be, I'm not sure, and it's mainly for this point. The way that generative AI, which is now considered to be one of the more advanced types of AI, the way it works, it's completely different from how the human mind works. And maybe thinking in a way that if we scale general AI to a more general level, it starts to become more human-like, is also an assumption. Isn't it too anthropomorphic to think in that way, that at some point it will be super intelligent and it will be like human plus plus? Maybe that's the wrong way of thinking about it, and that's why I made the earlier point. I think at some point we'll make some stupid mistake and give it more autonomy than it deserves, and it will start doing things that we cannot predict. But it will be at a point where the AI is still in a level where we can still pull some plugs and maybe it'll cause some damage, but you know, it's not the end of the world. It's not P-doom, say. So that's why I'm a bit more optimistic and think maybe it's not as determined as that.
Okay. Just other questions from the audience? Yeah, you there, sir, in the back.
Simon already mentioned a decrease in bargaining power as more and more even cognitively intensive jobs get automated. How do you imagine the future where a majority of work can or will be automated, and how do we deal with, you know, the class of people who can no longer do valuable work? Like, how do you reorganize society around that?
Yeah, is your question for Simon? Yeah.
Yeah, difficult to say. I have discussed it a bit with economists, and they, of course, tend to point out that in the past, whenever there was automation, actually there were new jobs, and actually we were all better off. And they tend to be confident that it will also be like that, and maybe they will be right to some extent. But I don't think that's necessarily incompatible with my sort of pessimism, because I think a lot of the bargaining power comes really from the cognitive superiority of humans. And then, I mean, if still, I mean, the progress in robotics also is a bit of another question, right? And to what extent robots will deploy it and so on. I don't think for my worry I would have to commit before to complete automation, and then that basically every human labor becomes redundant.
No, I'm sorry. Human labor will never be completely replaced by AI, robotics, etc. I mean, come on. What are we actually good at as people is taking care of each other? Look at healthcare. Look at a daycare for babies, for children. I think we have a lot of jobs that actually we have not enough people to work on, and we will never replace it fully with AI, robotics, etc. So
because human-to-human contact is so essential.
Yeah, it is, and it's and that's maybe more like the optimistic part. But if we use all these developments for good, and maybe theoretical, but let's say I will strive to that point. If we will use it in a good way, we actually will have more time and energy to take care of each other. So that's my hopeful part. When AI will actually deliver on the promise. We have a lot of challenges, but that's what we are for, to make sure that AI will deliver on that promise. That's my goal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Marieke?
So I am honestly not sure if I should be optimistic about it or not, but what I do think, the labor market has always changed. So jobs that 100 years ago were essential are now non-existent. I think the main issue that we're facing is that we don't know how fast the labor market will change. People can adapt themselves. Yeah. And people can learn new skills, or there will be a new generation that will focus on different jobs in the job market. I think that with AI, because we don't know how fast it will develop, and we don't have a focus yet on where we want it to develop, that is the actual threat for labor. Because, for example, if I just look at the economics, if nobody or barely somebody has a job, we should just move to a universal basic income, and then there's not a problem from an economic perspective. But of course, that causes other huge existential questions. So what are we here for then? And how do we live together? And I think that we are capable of answering all those questions as a society, but then we need to have the time. And I don't know if we have the time.
Final question. Yeah, so... Yeah, James. There's a mic coming up.
What the panel and Roman feel about the viability of compute governance. There's been some recent interesting papers from, amongst others, the Center for the Study of Existential Risk, where they argue that computers perhaps similar to nuclear value chain in that it is like detectable, quantifiable, excludable, and the value chain itself is quite concentrated. So basically, long story short, in the same way that you can spot if someone is trying to enrich uranium, you can also spot if someone is building a particularly powerful model. And then you can say, hey, please don't build that model. And that
And they'll
allows
say,
you to be
sure.
Well, yes, that allows you to be a bit of a cakeist. You can have some of the innovations of AI, but the super dangerous models, you can perhaps prevent people from building.
Okay, maybe a good start for you, Roman, if you want to answer that.
So, this is on, right? It's a wonderful idea if we're doing it right now when it's still a huge project, like Manhattan scale project, because that's something you can detect and control, and it's $1 trillion. Every year it becomes cheaper and cheaper to train those models. So maybe in 5 years you can do it in your laptop in your garage, and then all this regulation is not meaningful. So it delays, it helps, I support it, but it's not a long-term or permanent solution.
Because computing power will become cheaper and cheaper. And
algorithms also become more efficient.
Yeah.
So we train same models as like GPT-2 now on almost trivial laptops.
Yeah. Anyone here wants to respond? Tim, you have any?
I mostly agree with what Roman said. I do think it's a nice approach, and it's sort of sensible to think about it. I think it can help delay quite far, but yeah, algorithmic improvements in the past, I think ever since the deployment of ChatGPT, we've seen sort of at least like a 10 times algorithmic improvement already. Maybe not necessarily in how hard it will be to train the future model, but I mean, it's getting there. And I think any boundary you're going to set now is just going to be invalidated within a few years. There might be hard limits, and maybe you can have a sort of evolving compute governance kind of strategy. But of course, yeah, as the clusters become smaller, then it becomes harder to actually regulate that. So this might be difficult. And I mean, I guess this may be more of a political point that I don't really have a lot of expertise on. But I also don't know how stable this would be as a solution, just in terms of politics. Like if you, as a country, decide, okay, we are not going to build anything more powerful on this, and then you have to make sure that this is an international agreement and that everyone agrees on this, and that there's no sort of state actors that disagree, or at least go ahead. And then what action are you going to do? Are you going to go to war with them? It's very difficult to make that happen, I think. But I mean, honestly, I think the problem is very difficult anyway. So maybe this is. I definitely think this is an approach we should look at.
I know there are many more questions, and I have the feeling that we could continue this discussion for the rest of the evening. And the good news is we can. But first, let's give a warm round of applause for our panelists. Please have a seat again. I'm happy to hand over the microphone to Otto Barton, director of the Existential Risk Observatory. Oh, you don't need the mic.
Thank you. I'll take a table. Thank you all for coming here, and thanks a lot, Maarten, for moderating and giving me the stage. I had a relatively boring speech prepared, but I want to go for something more freestyle. And I just want to say that my PDOM is 99%. I'm more someone who thinks that there's a lot of possibilities actually to get it right. And I think, yes, you have a good point with the warning shots. I mean, it's definitely possible that something like this will happen. But I just want to say, like, if there is a possibility whatsoever that you're wrong, then we should really do something about it. And that's with many of the hopeful options that we see. So maybe warning shots, maybe alignment will work, maybe offense-defense balance will turn out well. So maybe AGI will never get built. I mean, there's a lot of people very skeptical about the whole concept of human-level intelligence, and maybe they're right. I don't think it's a super strong point, but who knows? So there's a lot of options. But I just want to say, okay, if this is wrong, then we are looking at human extinction. and that's something that I still find difficult to get my head around. I started this like 4 years ago, sorry. And if we are looking at human extinction, why the fuck aren't we doing anything, seriously? So I expected, like 4 years ago, that halfway this journey I would run into a really good counter-argument, and I thought, okay, someone is going to tell me why this is wrong. And I just thought, okay, let's give it a try. Let's found this pretty crazy idea, the Existential Risk Observatory, reducing human extinction risk by informing the public. And I figured before the first op-ed, someone is going to tell me why this is bullshit. But actually, I mean that we got here. For me, it says that it's not bullshit. And if it's not bullshit, we should solve it. And it's crazy that we haven't done it yet. So, just want to go over a few measures that I'm like, okay, why didn't we do this yet? Why aren't there like hundreds, thousands researchers in the Netherlands only working on trying to solve this problem? Why don't we discuss this in Parliament? Sorry, why don't we do that? Why is in the AI Safety Summit set up for this, to try to reduce this issue? Why is in the statement still not human extinction mentioned? And why did we not sign a treaty? That's a relatively new idea. If AI level goes towards something shortly before losing control, then we pause. I think that's has 0 downsides, basically. And I think we should sign it at the next AI Safety Summit in Paris. But if that doesn't work, as soon as possible. So there's a whole bunch of extra measurements, I think, that you can take. And there's a short description on our website. There's also a great paper in Science 2 weeks ago by 2 of the leading most cited AI scientists with lots of ideas on how to reduce this risk. So please read it. Joshua Bengio and Geoff Hinton in Science 2 weeks ago. You should Google it easily. There's lots of options on how to reduce this risk. Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of optimistic that we can fix this, but I'm also really like, why does this happen? Let's go to the drink. Thank you.